Stepping onto the metro car, Vera nearly cried out. Seated there was her husband, whom she had buried a year prior. Vera resolved to follow him, only to freeze in disbelief at what she saw. But before we continue, please tell us from which country you are watching this video. Enjoy listening. A year had passed. 4 long, agonizing seasons, each colored with a different shade of grief. Winter brought numbness. Spring, a painful awakening. Summer, an unbearable emptiness. Autumn, with its decay, seemed most in tune with her soul. It had been a year since Alexander was gone, and Vera had learned to move forward if living was the right word. She existed. She returned to her job, found a quiet little flat on the outskirts where no one knew her story, a place devoid of photographs that would stir up the past. She became a shadow of her former self, striving to remain unnoticed, to feel nothing too deeply, to abandon hope. Every evening, she descended into the subway. It was her daily ritual, the journey from the office home to her small, safe shell. Usually, she would lose herself in a book or simply gaze out the window, watching the dim lights streak by. Today was one of those days. The week's weariness had taken its toll, leaving her feeling utterly drained. The train lurched, picking up speed, and Vera's eyes lifted. And then she saw him. He stood by the opposite door, holding the rail, tall, dark-haired, with that same confident gaze that once made her heart race, the same curve of his lips when deep in thought, the same Alexander. Vera stood transfixed, as if an electric current had coursed through her. Her heart pounded wildly, blood rushed to her face. This was impossible, a hallucination, a trick of a grief-stricken mind. But he was there, real, alive. She blinked, trying to dispel the vision, but he didn't vanish. He stood there, a phantom from the past materialized in the present. Vera gasped for air, her hands trembling. She scrutinized his face, searching for any discrepancy, anything that might signal an error. But no, it was him, her Alexander, her deceased husband. The train pulled into a station, and he exited. As if in a trance, Vera followed. She wasn't thinking, not analyzing, just acting on instinct. He walked with a brisk pace, navigating the crowd with confidence. Vera kept her distance, careful not to lose sight of him. She felt like a pursuer, a spy, yet she couldn't stop. She needed to know the truth. He turned into a quiet alley, then emerged onto a wide street bustling with shops and cafes. Vera trailed him like a shadow. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Finally, he stopped before a modern residential complex, gated and with a guard at the entrance. He spoke to the guard, who nodded and let him pass. Vera halted at the gate, hesitant to approach. She watched him walk along a path toward one of the buildings. He paused at a door, took out his keys, and then the door opened. A woman stood on the threshold, young, beautiful, with long blonde hair. She smiled at him, and he embraced her. Then, from behind her, a small child darted out. He ran to him, and the man scooped him up, tossing him into the air. The child giggled. Vera recoiled as if struck. She watched the scene unfold like a frame from someone else's life, a happy family, an idol she would never know. And then she understood. He was alive. He had faked his own death. He had deceived her, deceived everyone. Vera turned and walked away. She walked without direction, without thought. She simply wanted to escape this place, this truth that had crushed her like a stone. Only one question pulsed in her mind. Why? Reaching the nearest metro station, she sat on a bench, trying to regain her composure. Her hands shook, tears welled in her eyes. She took out her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Igor," she whispered when he answered, "I need your help." Igor was her friend. They had known each other since childhood. He was an investigator, the one who handled Alexander's death case. Vera trusted him implicitly, knowing he would help her unravel this nightmare. "What happened, Vera?" Igor asked, hearing the tremor in her voice. I saw Sasha," she managed. "He's alive." A silence fell on the other end. Vera could only hear his ragged breathing. "Are you sure?" Igor finally asked. "Absolutely," Vera replied. "I saw him with my own eyes. He lives in another district. He has another family." "My God," Igor breathed. "I'm coming over right now. You'll tell me everything step by step." Vera waited for him, sitting on the metro bench. She felt hollowed out, as if all her energy had been drained. She didn't know what to do next, how to live with this truth. When Igor arrived, he embraced her, offering support. Vera felt a hysteria rising within her. She wanted to scream, to cry, to shatter everything around her, but instead she just sat, staring blankly, as if turned to stone. They went to her apartment. Vera recounted everything she had seen, everything she had felt. Igor listened intently, without interruption. He knew she needed to vent. "I don't understand," Vera said, finishing her story. "Why? Why did he do it?" "We'll figure it out," Igor replied. "We'll get to the bottom of it, I promise." He pulled out his phone and began to dial. Vera watched him as if in a fog. She knew everything would change now, that her life would never be the same. Igor ended the call and turned to her. "Tomorrow morning, I'll reopen the case," he said. "We'll see what's what. For now, you need to rest. Try to sleep." Vera shook her head. "I can't," she said. "I can't believe this is actually happening." "I know," Igor replied. "But you need to gather your strength. There's a lot of work ahead of us." He stayed with her until morning. Vera didn't close her eyes. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to comprehend how she could have been so wrong about the man she loved, how she could have missed anything suspicious. In the morning, they went to the archive where the case files on Alexander's death were kept. Vera watched in horror as Igor sifted through yellowed pages, photographs from the accident scene, interrogation reports. It felt as though she were reliving that terrible period of her life all over again. "Look here." Igor pointed to the identification protocol. "The identification was indirect, the body was severely damaged, and as I see, you weren't present for the procedure." Vera nodded, struggling to hold back tears. "They wouldn't let me in then. They said it was too much for me. I signed some papers, but I don't remember exactly what was in them." "That's strange," Igor mumbled, studying the document closely. "Usually, in such cases, the personal presence of relatives and a signature are required." He took out a magnifying glass and examined Vera's signature. "It looks like it wasn't signed by you." A chill ran down Vera's spine. "I don't understand." Igor continued to examine the case materials. He noticed anomalies in the document processing, the death certificate, the insurance policy, the compensation claim documents. They were all processed very quickly, without unnecessary delays, and her personal signature was almost entirely absent. "There are many discrepancies here, Vera," Igor said, setting the papers aside. "Far too many. It seems someone was very eager to close this case as swiftly as possible." Vera remembered minor inconsistencies in the insurance paperwork that she had previously overlooked. Vague phrasing, strange clauses that hadn't been properly explained to her. At the time, she was too overwhelmed by grief to delve into details. She had simply trusted the people who, she believed, wanted to help her. "That's precisely what they counted on," Igor replied dryly. "They exploited your grief, your vulnerability, but we'll fix it now." Igor continued his investigation. He requested surveillance footage from the metro to confirm that the man Vera had seen was indeed Alexander. He also sent a request to the insurance company for copies of the documents related to the compensation payout. Igor returned to the precinct with the feeling that he was holding dynamite. Confirmation of his suspicions brought no relief. On the contrary, the weight of responsibility pressed down harder. He immediately headed to the office where he usually reviewed camera footage. "Well, let's see how our deceased has resurrected," he muttered to himself, launching the program. Fortunately, the metro camera footage had been preserved. Igor entered the time and station indicated by Vera. Faces of passengers rushing about their business flashed across the screen. And there he was, a silhouette achingly familiar. Alexander wasn't a ghost, nor a figment of Vera's overwrought imagination, but a living, breathing, perfectly real Alexander. Igor replayed the recording several times, zooming in on the image. Without a doubt, it was him. His face looked a bit thinner, a certain weariness had appeared in his eyes, but it was Alexander, alive and well. "The nerve of him!" Igor cursed, leaning back in his chair. "Not only did he deceive Vera, but he also cheated the state." He printed out several stills of Alexander's image and headed to his superior. The superior, after hearing the report and looking at the photographs, frowned. "What do you think, Igor?" he asked. "I think this is large-scale fraud," Igor replied. "A staged death? Insurance payouts? We need to dig deeper." The superior nodded. "Proceed. Get whoever you need involved and be careful. Cases like these rarely come without surprises." Given the go-ahead, Igor plunged headfirst into the work. First, he sent a request to the insurance company that had paid the compensation to Vera. The answer came quite quickly. Yes, indeed, the insurance claim was recognized, and Vera had been paid a substantial sum. Igor requested copies of the documents on the basis of which the payment was made. Examining the papers, he immediately noticed something amiss. Vera's signature on the claim looked suspicious. Too confident, too flamboyant, not at all like her style. Igor compared it with the samples of Vera's signature he had on hand. There was no doubt the signature was forged. "Well, here's another charge," Igor muttered, drafting a report. "Document falsification." In parallel, he tasked his colleagues with identifying the man captured by the Metro cameras. The task proved simple. Using facial recognition software, they quickly determined that a man resembling Alexander resided at a specific address under the name of Alexei Sokolov. Igor immediately drove to the indicated address. It turned out to be an ordinary residential complex, like thousands in the city. He went up to the required floor and rang the doorbell. A woman opened it, young, attractive, with a child in her arms. "Hello," Igor introduced himself. "I'm from the police. I need to speak with Alexei Sokolov." The woman frowned. "Alexei is at work. Has something happened?" "I need to talk to him." "It's important," Igor replied. The woman hesitated. "Perhaps I can help with something?" Igor shook his head. "No, I need Alexei specifically. When will he be home?" "In the evening, around 7, the woman replied. "I'll come by," Igor said, leaving his phone number, and departed. Back at the precinct, Igor delved into the identity of Alexei Sokolov. A new passport, a new job, a new life. According to the documents, Alexei Sokolov was a widower who had lost his wife in an accident. He worked as a manager in a small firm dealing in construction materials. Nothing suspicious. But Igor couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Everything was falling into place too smoothly, too perfectly. He decided to check if Sokolov owned any property, and then another discovery awaited him. A small apartment in the suburbs was registered under Alexei Sokolov's name. The apartment had been purchased shortly before Alexander's death. "So that's it," Igor whispered. He prepared a backup plan for himself. By evening, Igor was back at the building where Alexander, now Alexei, lived. He parked nearby and began to wait. Around 7 in the evening, a car pulled up to the building. A man emerged. Alexander. Igor had no doubt. He got out of the car, adjusted his jacket, and headed towards the entrance. Igor got out of his car and followed. He caught up with Alexander at the very entrance. "Alexander!" he called out. Alexander turned sharply. Fear flashed in his eyes. "You're mistaken," he said. "I'm Alexei." "Don't play games," Igor replied. "I know who you are. You are arrested for fraud and document falsification." Alexander tried to break free, but Igor was stronger. He twisted his arms behind his back and snapped handcuffs on him. "You have no right," Alexander shouted. "I didn't do anything." "We'll sort that out at the precinct," Igor replied, leading him to the car. In Alexander's apartment, or rather Alexei's, remained Olga, his new partner. She stood by the window, a small child in her arms, watching the police car drive away with her beloved man. She understood nothing. What was happening? Who was this person who called Alexei Alexander? Why was he arrested? Chaos reigned in Olga's mind. She didn't know what to do, where to run, who to ask for help. She felt the world around her crumbling, her happy life turning into a nightmare. Olga was summoned for questioning as a witness. She arrived accompanied by a state-provided attorney. She looked lost and frightened. Igor tried to speak to her gently, understanding that she was an innocent victim of deception. "Olga, I understand this is a shock for you," he began, "but we need your help to sort this out." Olga remained silent, her head bowed. Her hands trembled. "Tell me everything you know about Alexei Sokolov," Igor continued. "How did you meet? What did he do? What did he say about his life?" Hesitantly, stumbling over her words, Olga began her story. She met Alexei. That's how everyone knew Alexander at the cafe where she worked as a waitress. He seemed like a modest, intelligent man who had experienced a severe loss, the death of his wife. He often came to the cafe, they talked, and gradually a fondness grew between them. He spoke about his work, web design, showed her photos of his projects. He was attentive, caring, a good father to their child. "He never talked about his past, about his family?" Igor inquired. "No," Olga shook her head. "He was very reserved. He said the past was the past. It needed to be left behind. I didn't insist. I thought he hadn't recovered from his loss." Igor listened attentively, making notes in his notepad. He understood that Olga was telling the truth. She genuinely knew nothing about Alexander's true identity. He had meticulously hidden his past, building a new life on a foundation of lies. Meanwhile, Vera was summoned to the station to give her official testimony. She sat in Igor's office, gazing out the window at the gray urban landscape. Inside her, a strange mix of emotions churned: shock, relief, anger, and a semblance of peace. "Vera, how are you feeling?" Igor asked, noticing her pensive gaze. "Strange," she replied, "as if I've woken from a nightmare. It all seems unreal." "I understand," Igor nodded, "but it's over now. He will pay for what he did." Vera sighed. "I don't know what I'm feeling, Igor. Anger, resentment, probably all of it, but mostly relief. I lived with this pain, this uncertainty for so long, and now it's clear." Igor told her about the progress of the investigation, Alexander's arrest, Olga's interrogation. He showed her photographs of Alexander under his new name, with his new family. Vera looked at them with detached interest, as if seeing someone else's life. "He has been charged with fraud, document falsification, and forgery of a signature," Igor informed her. "He faces a serious sentence." Vera nodded. "I don't know what he was thinking," she said softly. "How could he do this? Why?" "Money, Vera," Igor replied. "Only money. He was in debt. His business was collapsing. This was his only chance." Alexander sat in the pretrial detention cell, staring at the wall. He was dejected and bewildered. He understood that his life had collapsed. Everything he had so meticulously built had turned to dust. He felt no remorse for his actions. He believed he had no other choice. He was cornered, and death, a staged one of course, seemed like the only way to save himself. But now he understood he had made a huge mistake. He had not only destroyed Vera's life, but had also betrayed Olga and their child. He knew he faced a prison sentence. He knew Olga would never forgive him. He had lost everything. The creak of an opening door echoed in the cell. The investigator entered. "Your lawyer is here," he said. In the lawyer's room, a young man in a sharp suit awaited him. He introduced himself and offered Alexander a seat. "I've reviewed your case," the lawyer began. "The charges are serious, but we have a chance to mitigate the sentence." Alexander listened impassively. He didn't care. He knew that no lawyer's tricks could bring back what he had lost. "What about Olga and the child?" he asked, interrupting the lawyer. "Olga is in a difficult state," the lawyer replied. "She is receiving psychological support." Alexander covered his face with his hands. He felt insignificant, pathetic. He had caused so much pain to people. "I deserve all of this," he whispered. "I deserve the punishment." Vera returned home. She felt empty, yet free. She knew a long and arduous road to recovery lay ahead, but she was ready for it. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Vera startled and went to open it. Olga stood on the doorstep. Vera looked at her in silence. Olga was pale, her eyes red from crying. In her arms she held a small child. I wanted to talk to you," Olga stammered, her voice trembling. Vera stepped back, letting her into the apartment. They went to the living room and sat on the sofa. The child slept peacefully in Olga's arms. "I know this is difficult for you right now," Vera began, "but I want you to know I don't blame you. You are also a victim of deception." Olga burst into tears. I don't know what to do," she said through her sobs. "I believed him. I loved him. And he destroyed everything." "I understand," Vera nodded. "I loved him too, and I was deceived as well." They sat in silence for a long time, each lost in thought. Then Olga raised her head and looked at Vera. "What will happen to him?" she asked. "He will answer for his actions," Vera replied. "The law is the law." "And what about me and the child?" asked Olga. "How do we live now?" Vera sighed. She didn't have an answer, but she knew she wouldn't leave Olga in distress. "We'll figure something out," she said. "We'll help each other." Olga gave a weak smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for understanding." Vera hugged her. In that moment, they weren't rivals, but two women united by a shared tragedy. Two women who had to find the strength to move on, no matter what. Vera's insurance compensation was returned to her, recognizing her as the injured party. The money appeared in her account a few weeks after Alexander's arrest. She stared at the numbers on her computer screen, but felt no triumph. It was money paid for years of deceit, for shattered dreams, for stolen trust. The sum seemed enormous. But how could it measure the pain she had endured? How could it quantify the years spent mourning a living person? Igor called her that same day. "Vera, did the money arrive?" "Yes," she replied dryly. "Are you going to sue Alexander for additional compensation for emotional distress?" Vera paused for a moment. Images flashed through her mind. Alexander, standing before her in court, his pathetic appearance, his attempts to justify himself. But then she decisively answered, "No, Igor, I'm not going to." "Are you sure? He deserves everything that happens to him?" "I know, but I don't want to waste another minute of my life on him. Let the court decide his fate. For me, this story is over." Igor sighed. "As you wish. I just wanted to make sure you received everything you were entitled to." "Thank you, Igor. You've helped me a lot." Alexander was left alone. He sat in the holding cell, his gaze fixed on the drab gray wall. His entire world had shattered in an instant. He had lost everything: his family, his liberty, his integrity. Olga hadn't visited him. He knew she could never find it in her heart to forgive him. He had betrayed her, deceived her, stolen her future. He pictured her face, etched with pain and utter disappointment, and a wave of guilt washed over him, constricting his heart. Olga's words from their last conversation, spoken in the investigator's office, echoed relentlessly in his mind. "I don't understand how you could have done this. How could you have lived with me, knowing it was all a lie? How could you look me in the eye and tell me you loved me?" Her words felt like daggers, piercing his very soul. He had no response, nothing to offer but silence, his head bowed in shame. One evening, Vera was at a cafe with a friend discussing a contemporary art exhibition. Her phone rang. It was Igor. "Vera," he began, "I know you didn't want to be involved in the trial, but I have something important to tell you." "What is it?" she asked. "Alexandra has been sentenced to 5 years of imprisonment." Vera fell silent. She was unsure of how to feel. On one hand, a sense of satisfaction bloomed within her. Justice had finally prevailed. Yet on the other hand, she felt a pang of pity for Alexandra. She didn't wish suffering upon him. Her only desire was for him to disappear from her life completely. "Thank you, Igor, for letting me know," she finally managed to say. "I think that's all," he replied. "Yes, Vera, That's everything. You're free now." After the call, Vera felt as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was indeed free. She had been liberated from the past, from resentment, from all the hurt. She had forgiven Alexandra, not for his sake, but entirely for her own. She realized that forgiveness wasn't about condoning his actions. It was about releasing herself from his hold over her life. Vera also discovered within herself the strength not only to forgive, but also to extend a helping hand to another person whom Alexandra had also wronged. This act revealed her true inner resilience and her profound capacity for empathy. She understood that negativity breeds further negativity, and only through forgiveness and support could that destructive cycle be broken.